is lesson 50, modeling linear inequalities. We will be able to use inequalities to model scenarios. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at two scenarios. The first scenario is just a short little scenario, but the second scenario is a big one. And what we're going to do is this big one, we're only going to do two examples today. But this second example, I actually predict will take us about 25 minutes to do, which is a lot, but it's going to combine everything that we've learned so far into one question. And so that's one of the reasons that it's going to take us probably 25 minutes. This is also going to be both of these examples is going to give you a good idea of the kind of things that I might ask of you during an extended response task. So just be aware of that, pay attention to those kinds of things just so that you know. Because ultimately what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing one piece of information followed by another piece of information followed by another piece of information, which is exactly what would show up in the extended response task. So let's get on to it. Lesson 50, by the way, does anyone, let me just know, does anyone know, you can say it in chat or out loud, does anyone know what 50 is in Roman numerals? We've got one answer already from someone. Is it anonymous? Tyler says L. Is L what it is in Roman numerals? Let's find out, ladies and gents. L is the symbol for 50 in Roman numerals. Now, we don't use that very often. Obviously, you guys are used to V and X and I, but L and M is for 1,000, C is for 100, but L is like doesn't really make too much sense. The reason that I think it is because originally it was meant to be a V with an overlapping 1. So it's a bigger version of 5, which sort of makes sense. That's what 100 is. It's like a bigger version of 5. But that V overlapping with an I became this sort of symbol, which is like an upside down T, which is very, very close to then became this symbol here. So that means if you wanted to write 1950, you would probably write like, well, if you wanted to write 56, you write LVI. So that'd be, yeah, so that'd be 56. And so if you wanted to write, yeah, so 156 would be CLVI or something like that. So that's how you would do it. Roman numerals are something that we like to teach students. Like we like to teach you guys this in like primary school. I'm not sure if they still teach it in primary school. They're supposed to. And the thing is that they show up a lot in just everyday life, even though like we've obviously moved to the decimal system many, many, many years ago. They still show up in movie posters, in fancy clocks. I saw this picture the other day, which was this woman which had this fancy clock, which had these Roman numerals for the numbers on it. And because she couldn't read Roman numerals, this woman just put her clock upside down. And yeah, it looked very, very dumb because she was like, well, obviously you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, so it was just like, it was like, okay, you're a special person. So I was like, and this is, yeah, it just shows up. They show up every so often, like on watches and stuff like that, and like so on and so forth. I'm just looking at my watch here. My watch does not have Roman numerals, but it has like a double line. So yeah, but and it's one of those ones that, yeah, it's still worth knowing. Saying that though, not only do students, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you never learned how to do Roman numerals. I also wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know how to read analog clocks, because that's not something they teach as well as they used to back in primary school. But, you know, these are the breaks. Last time I had you guys, we talked about this. We talked about how to take a constraint. So what we did is we did some examples with the zebra. We sort of talked about, okay, well, what happens, what are some basic limitations? Well, we know that it was like the idea is they had to be greater than or equal to 0 because you can't have negative zebras. Single variables, so that'd be A can't be greater than 10, something like that. 2 variables, and these are when the total. So the total number of animals cannot exceed 15. So A plus Z cannot exceed 15. So let's be less than or equal to 15. And then there was relationship variables. So there must be 2 more antelope for each zebra. Then that means the amount of antelope must be greater than or equal to the number of zebras plus 2. And all these together we could use to create a graph. Then we talked about how to create an objective function from these type of information. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these types of this skill that I taught you in a single period together to build on for this lesson here. So let's start. We've got 2 examples here today. We're going to start with this example first. Okay. So we've got ourselves a magazine. We'll say that the magazine is like, you know, like your Vogue-esque kind of magazine. And on the magazine, like, you know, on the magazine, there is some people on the magazine just doing some stuff, you know. And yeah, so the thing about the magazine is going to be like, okay, cool. Like, what are some of the rules that they have on this magazine? So we're going to say the rules. There are some rules about women and men on the magazine. We're going to say there must be at least 2 women on the magazine cover. Because, you know, like they're trying to sell the magazine and so they want to make sure that there is some women representation, maybe to catch the eyes of men, who knows? I'm just making stuff up here. There must be at least 1 male on the cover. So, you know, it has to be, you know, at least somewhat gender inclusive of both genders. I don't know. There must be 10 people, must be less than 10 people in the front cover. I figure that makes sense. If you have more than 10 people, then that's getting a bit extreme. There's about too many people in the front cover. There must be less than 8 men. You can't have, so not only can you have kind of 10 people, you can't have like too many men. And it's like, all right. But it's interesting actually that that constraint's already covered. But that's fine. There must be at least 1 person on the front cover, so you can't have a blank front cover, which makes sense. And there must be more women than men on the front cover. Obviously, yeah, we're going to ignore. And I wouldn't be, honestly, by the way, I wouldn't be too surprised if rules like this didn't actually exist in like regular magazine, in the magazine world, photography world. It's like, oh no, we have to make sure that there is at least 2 women in the shot every time that we take a photo or something like that, you know, because if we're going to talk about industries that are a bit backwards and old-fashioned, fashion would definitely be one of them in some ways. So what we're going to do first is we're going to break down how we would label these constraints. As you can see, there are 6 constraints. There's a fair few constraints here. So we're going to label these constraints. The first thing I want from you guys is in chat is, could you guys give me what variables should we be using for this scenario? What variables should we use? W and what? M. Okay, cool. W and M. So let's now quickly say, well, what does W mean? Oh, what does W mean? What do W and M mean? So they're good variables we can use. Women and men, yep. Women and males, the amount of women, that's what I wanted to do. number or amount of women. So don't just write W equals women, M equals man. We want the number of men. Because remember, this could be different things, right? It could be the number of men, the number of males or something, whatever. There could be the amount that the male's getting paid, the size of the males. We don't know what the M is, how much food the males eat. We just know that, you know, what they are. So make sure that you write down the number of. Now we've got some basic constraints here. Let's look at, obviously you can't have negative women. So W must be greater than 0 and M must be greater than or equal to 0. You can't have negative men either. You could definitely make some bad jokes at this point about what a negative man is or what a negative woman is. But we're not going to make those jokes because we're, you know, responsible 21st century adults. So yeah, but you can have 0. But you have to have, it has to be positive, is what we're saying. The number of men or women has to be positive. You can't have negative men, you can't have negative women. So we're going to look at this first constraint. There must be at least 2 women on the front cover. So what would that be? What would this constraint be? What would it look like? There must be 2 women on the front cover. What would that one be? Suggestions in the chat, please. What would this look like, this first one here? There must be 2 women on the cover. Come on, guys. Give me some answers, some ideas that can be wrong. There must be 2 women on the front cover. What would you do? Smaller than? W is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, it's not smaller than, it's greater than. So let's look at this. W must be greater than or equal to 2 because there must be at least 2 women. So there must be more than that. No, Caitlin, you got it correct the first time. Caitlin sent me a private message. Obviously, she doesn't want people to know that she's trying to participate in the class. But she sent me the correct answer, and so I wrote it down. And then she's like, "Oh no, I got it the wrong way." I said, "No, you got it right the first time. You want your W to be more than 2. It can equal 2, but it has to be more than 2." So using that information here, here's a freebie for someone. What's the next one going to be? There must be at least 1 male on the cover. What should that one be? Especially someone who's like, "Oh man, I don't want to get called out because I haven't been paying attention." Now that you've seen what the one for women is, what must the one for men be? Hint, it should be very similar. M must be greater than or equal to 1. Yeah, perfect. M, oh, stop doing that. M must be greater than or equal to 1. So there's 2 variables here. And that's because it has to be at least 1. So the next one is this. There must be less than 10 people on the cover. Okay, so for less than 10 people, right? This is an interesting one. So instead of saying male, like it did, like instead of saying, in the first one we've got women, the second one we've got males or men, the third one we've got people. Now, if I want to do people, I don't want to do just men or just women. I want to do both. So if I have all the men and then I have all the women and I add all of them together. So if I have the number of men and number of women, that will give me the number of people. But I want the number of people on the cover to be less than 10. Not less than or equal to, but less than 10. Okay, there must be less than 8 men on the cover. What would that one look like? Give me some suggestions. Can be wrong. You can send me a private message and I will not pick on you unless perfect anonymous person who got this answer completely correct. Yes, M is less than 8. Looking like this. So that's how you would do that one. So now we've only got 2 left. There must be at least one person on the front cover. So this is another one of these people ones. So that means that the number of men plus the number of women must be greater than or equal to 1. You can't just have, and that does mean the number of men can be 0 or the number of women can be 0, but the number of men and the number of women can't both be 0. One of them has to be more than 1. And what about this last one? There must be more women than men. How is that going to work? What's that one going to be? What's that going to look like? There must be more women than men.
W.
Yeah.
Arrow to the M.
Yep, correct. W arrow to the men. W should be greater than men. Thank you. So there's 6 constraints. That's a lot of constraints you might think. Plus, you could also take these 2 constraints as well. These are 2 freebie constraints. So there's like 8 constraints here. And so there's a lot of information here. So that means this is going to be a little bit challenging to graph, but we're going to see if we can actually get a feasible region. And we're going to talk about graphing them. Some of these are easier to graph than others. So what I would suggest doing is graphing the easy ones. Which ones are the easy ones? The ones that are easy are the ones that are just one variable. And what we're going to do to do those, and those are the single variable ones. We've also, by the way, got a couple of relationship ones and total ones. Both of those are interesting, a little bit harder to do, but yeah. So the first one is actually one of the easy ones to do. W is greater than or equal to 2. That means that your value for W must be more than 2. So that line here, this line is a W equals 2. So therefore we know that the value must be greater than this line. So that's one of the easy ones to do. W must be greater than 2. So that means you can't have one woman on the front cover. It would just not be good enough for this magazine, apparently. There must be at least one male on the front cover. Okay, so that means that if we look for M equals 1, which is here, then we're going to have a line that looks like this. And it has to be more than, so I'm going to shade this region here. So now we've got a bit of an idea of the smallest amount of people we could probably have is 1 woman and 2 women and 1 man. That's like the smallest number of people we could have on the cover. Now, so that's ticked off this one, and we've ticked off this one. We've finished that one. So the next easiest one to do is not the next one, is the one 2 down. There must be less than 8 men on the cover. That means if I go over to 8 men, or M equals 8, that's be less than. Now, because it says less than, I have to make sure that I do a dotted line. We cannot actually include this line in the graph. So I'm going to say this is M is less than 8. So that means all of this region is now ignored. Also, by the way, I forgot to do this. M is greater than 1 or equal to 1. So now we're starting to get a bit of a picture going on here. Okay, so there must be more women than men. No. Okay, so now what we could do is now we've done all the easy ones. Those are all of the easy ones. The rest of them are a little bit more challenging. So we're going to start with this one here. M plus W must be less than or equal to 10. So what we would do to plot that is we go M plus W equals 10. Then let's say let M equal 0. That's going to be W equals 10. Let W equals 0. That's going to give you M equals 10. So that's going to give you 2 points. We've got a point up here at 10, a point down here at 10, which gives you this line here. Oops, let me just see if I can draw this line properly. And we need to check whether 0, 0 is in the region. So we're going to check 0, 0. Is 0 plus 0 less than 10? Yes, it is. So therefore, where'd my line go? Sometimes that happens when I'm drawing lines, they just disappear. Oh, for God's sake, like this one is going to disappear. It's because I keep opening up the menu by accident. Close enough. So that means that we know that this region of the top is going to get crossed out. So that gives us this here. This gives us now a finite possibility.
So I got a question.
Yes.
Does it matter if we drew a dotted line or a straight line there? Because it says less than.
It does say less than. You were correct. It should be a dotted line, actually. Thanks for helping me out, Sang. You're right. So this should be a dotted line. So it should look more like this. So I'm just going to make it quite close to a solid line, just because I want to be able to see where that feasible region is. But yeah, we're starting to get a good idea of the feasible region. Now, M plus W must be greater than or equal to 1 is very similar to this plot, actually. So I'm going to do that as well. That's going to look like this. M plus W equals 1. Same drama. Let M equal 0. That's going to give you W equals 1. Let W equals 0. That's going to give you M equals 1. So that means that we have this point here at 1. Sorry, this line here at 1, 1. So that's going to be literally this line here. And we can pretty much ignore this completely. And then we said, is 0, 0 in the region? Well, we can check. Is 0 plus 0 greater than 1? No, it's not. So therefore, it needs to be crossed out. So it's interesting that this is actually a waste of time because it doesn't actually like change the feasible region at all. Now, if we had uploaded this one first, then we might be like, oh, cool, that makes sense. But we don't really care about this. You should also look at this and think, there must be at least one person on the front cover. Okay, but we already know that there must be at least 2 women. You can't have one person and there be 2 women. So it's pretty much impossible. There must be at least 1 man. So this is always going to be true. So sometimes your constraints won't actually change anything. Now this bottom one is going to be the last challenging one. I'm going to rub out this part down here. Just because I need the space. Which is there must be more men than women. So W must be greater than men. So what we would do first is I would plot W equals M. So if W equals M is just a line, which is going to look like this. the amount of women equals the amount of men. That is going to mean that if I have 2 women, then I have 2 men. If I have 3 women, I have 3 men. And this is a greater than, so that means I need to draw a dotted line. If I have 4 women, I have 4 men. So therefore, I'm going to draw a dotted line through here. And now what I'm going to say is the number of women must be greater than the number of men. So we're going to check a point. Now I'm not going to check 0, 0 because the line goes through 0, 0. So I'm going to check a point. I'm going to check this point here, which is m equals 5, w equals 3. Is 3 greater than 5? No, it's not. So therefore, this is not in the region. So therefore, I would cross out everything else. So I'm going to do that like this. And that now gives me a feasible region that looks like this. And this is also, ladies and gents, why you should not shade the feasible region. If you shade the feasible region, this is going to be really hard to find because you're going to have to look for the one that is shaded the most. Whereas if you shade everything but the feasible region, it's very clear to see which one is the feasible region. The only part without any lines on it. I forgot to label this last one, which was W. This one here is W plus M is greater than 1, greater than or equal to 1. And this one up here is actually W must be greater than M. And so that gives us this feasible region. I'm going to label it here by just writing feasible region. I might also just go the feasible region be blank. The points actually at the of the corners are actually quite easy to do for this one. So this one is going to be 1, 9. Oh, maybe. I'm going to come back to that one because I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure it should be 1, 9, but yeah, this one is the easy. These two are both going to be 2s. So this is 1, 2, and this is 2, 2, because remember the number of women and the number of men have to be the same to here. So then everything on this line, W equals M. So that makes this one easy because this one's going to be 5, 5. And this one's going to be 1, 9. Yeah. Now I just did those by just looking at the graph. You could find these out. How could you find these out? For example, this one here is the intersection of this curved line here. W plus M is equal to 10. And it's also the intersection of W must equal M. So therefore, when you sub that in, W plus W equals 10, 2W equals 10, W equals 5, M equals 5. That's how I got that point there. And you can do the same thing for this one here, which is W plus M equals 10, but if M equals 1, then W must equal 9. So it gives you this feasible region here. And then you can see that some of these corner points are included. Some of these are not. The ones that are included are this one, and this one. This one is not included because you can see, no, sorry, I lie. Only those 2 are included. The other ones are points that are next to a dotted line, so or attached to a dotted line. So they wouldn't be included in any of the questions. You said before that M plus W must be greater than or equal to 1. What was that about again? So that was this one here, that there must be at least one person on the front cover, which makes sense when you look at it. But then when you look at all the other rules, it's like that's not necessary. That rule doesn't matter. Why does that rule not matter? Because we know there must be at least one male on the front cover. So saying there must be at least one person and saying there must be at least one male, it kind of covers it up. It kind of like you end up covering over the same land. It's like saying there must be at least two women on the cover, and then saying there must be more than one woman. There must be more than one woman on the cover. Of course, there must be more than one woman if there has to be at least two. I hope that answers your question. So from this point here, where would the question get continued? So where the question might get continued might be like, it costs, you know, this is sexist and terrible, but this is the way the world works. Let's just say that it costs, because, you know, the world sucks. Let's say it costs women, it costs us, let's say women, it costs $30 per hour or something like that. They get paid $30 per hour, but men are like cost $35 an hour because, you know, when men always get paid more because, you know, sexism sucks. So you could use this to make an objective function. You could say, well, the cost of the cover is going to be the amount of men, 35M plus 30W, and you could use that to find out which will be the cheapest cover. So the cheapest cover will either be this one or this one. Or you can find out, well, which cover would be the most expensive. The most expensive cover would either be this one or this one. You don't need to check these two because they're not included. You can't have 5 men and 5 women, because if you had 5 men and 5 women, then that would mean that you wouldn't have more women than men. So you don't need to check that. And we already know that the answer to the objective function will be at one of these two corners, either the top or the bottom one. So that's a full question from start to finish. And even that full question from start to finish took us about 30 minutes to do. So I'm a bit hesitant. Isn't 1 9 not included because it's on, if there is a dotted line? Isn't the dotted line, is it $2 line? No, wait. Yes, you're right. 1 9 is not included because it's a dotted line. And is that a dotted line too? So the only corner point that counts, I lie, the only corner point that counts is actually, the only corner point that counts is this one down here. Because this one down the bottom, because it's the only one that's between two lines that actually measure anything. 1 9, there must be less than 10 people, and there must be greater than, the men must be greater than women, means that the only corner point that you can actually measure is going to be this one here. And yeah, cool. All right, that's interesting. So let's now look at what else have we got here. We're going to move on to a new question. Unless, are there any questions about this long question that we did here? This is actually very similar to the extended response task that I'm going to get you guys to do. So yeah. All right. Let's go with this. This is going to be the big question, right? I'm actually going to set a timer because I want to see how long it takes us to do this question. I actually think that this is going to take us about maybe more than 25 minutes. Who knows? So now I'm not going to get you to copy down everything for this question because most of this is actually just set up. But this is actually one of the types of questions that I've seen a lot in the textbook. So I decided to I wanted to do a whole question with you guys. I made this question up myself. So if it doesn't work or it doesn't make sense, you can blame me for it. But I have tested it like 3 times. So hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, I'm sorry. We're going to say there is a major cereal company that produces 2 products, and they are that are its most profitable. and they're called Bran Fan and Cocoa Crunch. Okay, Bran Fan and Cocoa Crunch. Both cereals are made at the factory, and they require different amounts of wheat, sugar, and minerals. So minerals, yeah, maybe minerals were the only things that I could come up with because but I was like, no, I don't know, minerals. We'll do that. The factory closed on a weekend, so on this Friday, the foreman lists how much of the ingredients is left and how much of that ingredient of each cereal, how much each cereal needs. So this graph is probably the most important part. So you can see here with bran, because it's Bran Fan, because obviously it's got a lot of fiber, it's going to need a lot more. Whoopsies. Whoa, go back. Bran Fan is a, why is that not? Because I haven't got a pencil selected. Of course. Bran Fan being made of bran needs a lot of needs a fair bit of wheat, but you can see that Bran Fan doesn't need a lot of sugar because Bran Fan is probably the cereal that you give the 40, 50-year-olds are eating to kind of keep themselves regular and so on and so forth. And it needs some minerals, but not a lot of minerals. Whereas Cocoa Crunch has got a lot less wheat, but look how much sugar. It's packed with a fair bit more sugar, twice the amount of sugar, and same amount of minerals. So that means that both of these two cereals are a little bit different. But what have we got in the factory? Well, we seem to have in the factory, we have a lot of wheat. We don't have too much flour, and we have, a fair, decent amount of minerals. So already I can sort of get an idea. I reckon it makes more sense to make, Cocoa Crunch, because look, you don't need as much, I don't know, you don't need as much wheat to make Cocoa Crunch. You need a lot of wheat to make Bran Fan. You do need a lot of sugar though. We don't have that much sugar, so it's going to be an interesting toss-up. But it won't matter. It won't matter if it's like, if a box of Cocoa Crunch costs $20 and a box of Bran Fan costs $1, then it makes sense to make Cocoa Crunch, because even though you might not make as much, it's worth more. So we need to know how much each of these costs. Bran Fan costs $3.50 a box. Okay, so it's pretty expensive. Cocoa Crunch is $4.20. Whoa, okay. How many units of each product should we maximize our profits? Okay, so now we have a goal here. We want to try and get as much profit as we can. You could actually change this question around. You could actually say, how much we want to try and get as many boxes as we can, or so on and so forth. But yeah, so let's now look at this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. I'm going to cut out the parts that aren't important. So what are really important is just the top one, the graph, the table, and this information here, because we're going to use this information later on. And we're going to do this question the same way we did the last question, and we're going to do that by doing 3 steps. Step 1, we're going to define some variables. Step 2, we're going to construct some constraints. There aren't as many constraints for this one, so don't worry. And step 3, we're going to construct the objective function. I'm going to give you guys about a minute to copy down maybe minute and a half actually, to copy down the table and then the objective function question. And then I'm going to ask you guys in chat to give me some suggestions as to what a good variables we could use. What variables could we use? And don't just write one-word answer. It should be blah, the amount of, or the number of, or the type of something. So I'm going to give you guys a minute and a half to copy down the table and everything else. Yes. If you're wondering why I'm silent, it's because I'm giving you guys some time to copy it down. Don't worry, because I was like, I thought, oh, no, I didn't freeze. All right, doesn't matter. It's been full time anyway. So can I get some suggestions on what some variables we might think about using in this question? What type of things do you think we might use? Like what variables? Ideas? Anyone? I don't want to give you guys the answer straight away. I want to maybe see if I can encourage some answers from you. What would be a good variable that do you think we would use? If you're a bit confused about what we should do, grab a look at at that bottom paragraph that you wrote down. B is the amount of both units. Is one of the suggestions. Sort of, that's good, but B is the amount of units of what? Oh yeah, perfect, brand. So that's what I would suggest. So suggest, let me just quickly make sure that I'm on a pencil. I would go, okay, let's go B equals, we'll go with, is the boxes of brand fan. And the other one is C for C, would be the opposite one. C would be units of boxes of Cocoa Crunch. I'm just going to have boxes of Cocoa Crunch just because I want to keep it the same. Now, I'm going to help you guys with the first one, but I want you guys to tell me the answer to the other two. The first one is this, okay? So let's look at wheat first. Wheat is what we're going to look at first. Now, we only have 100. We only have 100 units of wheat. I'm not going to say it could be kilograms. It could be like tons. I don't know what it is. I've just said 100, right? So that means that if I'm going to use wheat, I can only use up to 100. Okay, I can only use up to 100. Now that means, okay, that if I was to say, well, how much wheat does a brand need? 20. So if I had 3 boxes of, if I have 5 boxes of bran, I would, if B was 5, then I would be equal to 20. So that means I can't make 6 boxes or 6 units of bran. And the same way is that C would be 10 times 10. So if I take the number of, if I take 20 times the number of boxes of bran, and I add 10 times the amount of boxes of Cocoa Crunch, then that will be has to be less than 100. I can't have, so that means I can't have 20 boxes of Cocoa Crunch because that would need 200 units of wheat. I can't have 20 boxes of bran because then that would need 20 times 20 would be 400. Then we'd need 400 parts of wheat. I can't even have 5 boxes of bran and 5 boxes of cocoa because Cocoa Crunch, because that would exceed it too. I can't even have 4 boxes of bran and 4 boxes of cocoa because that would exceed it. That is how you do the calculations for wheat. I would like you guys to give me a suggestion for sugar. What would be the constraint for the amount of sugar? Let me know in chat, guys, or out loud if you want. Oh, here's a suggestion. 5b plus 10c must be less than or equal to 50. I would say that is correct. 5b plus 10c must be less than or equal to 50. That is our second constraint. And the third and final constraint, guys, can you give me the one for minerals? I'm going to wait till I get, this time I'm going to wait till I get 2 suggestions for the answer for minerals, or maybe 3. Maybe I'm going to wait till I get 3 answers for this suggestion for minerals before I put the answer up to see if you guys get it correct. So what would be the similar constraint? There's 1, there is 2, and there is 3. 3b plus 3c must be less than or equal to 18. Thank you. So 3b plus 3c must be less than or equal to 18. Now, so that's now the 3 constraints. Now let's see if we can, so that's now the first thing done. We've defined our variables. We've constructed constraints. I should say that we've always got these bonus constraints here at the bottom, which I should just put here just in case. B must be greater than or equal to 0 and C must be greater than or equal to 0. You can't have negative boxes of Cocoa Crunch. And again, it's one of those ones, it's like, yes, I know that makes sense. You're probably like, yeah, sure. But just, it's always worth putting down just so that you go, you don't get to the end and you go, hey, this would be perfect if I had -5C. And then I'm like, you can't have -5 boxes of Cocoa Crunch. It doesn't make sense. So now we're going to try and construct an objective function. So we want to maximize our profit. Our profit is going to be equal to whatever we can sell. So our profit or an objective function is going to be equal to, it's $3.50 for a brand fan is $3.50. So if I have $3.50 times B, and then I add $4.20 times C, then that will give me a amount of profit. We're going to ignore the fact that, like, we're ignoring the fact here, by the way, if you're paying attention, you're like, we're going to ignore the fact that we had to pay for the sugar and the wheat and stuff. I could have put that in this question and be like, what is the amount of profit? And remember, so to subtract, you know, like $3, remember to subtract $7 for the amount of like food that the cost of the ingredients, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to focus on let's just pretend that we have all this stuff for free. So maybe it's leftover wheat and leftover sugar. So how many boxes can we get? You're also technically ignoring the price for packaging and that kind of stuff. But those are that's how we can take an information from a graph like this and turn it into some kind of list of constraints. And that's how we can also turn a question like this and turn that into an objective function. So, are there any questions on what I've done here so far? Because if there are, then you need to let me know. Because what we're going to do is I'm going to change the slide. Now I'm going to keep some parts of this information here, but I'm going to get rid of others. Also, if you need some more time to copy down what we've written here, then you'll need to let me know as well. Because as I said, when we go to the next slide, we're going to get rid of some of this information. Okay, I'm going to change the slide. Here we go. And by the way, if you guys want to know, we've been working on this question for 16 minutes already. So let's see if, I don't really understand how you got the objective function. Good, thank you. I'm glad that you asked. So the objective function here is the profits. We want to know, how can we maximize our profits? So that's what we want to try and achieve. So to maximize our profits, I need to know, well, how much can I get? So if I've got brand fan is $3.50 a box, so I go $3.50 times the amount of brand fan that I made. And Cocoa Crunch is $4.20, so I go $4.20 times the amount of Cocoa Crunch. Now, if I was just to ignore, I'm just going to take this a little bit further. I know that I've answered your question now. If we were to ignore all of this stuff about like how much stuff have we got, I would look at this and say Cocoa Crunch is like worth more than brand. So we should pretty much be just making Cocoa Crunch. But of course, in this situation, there are other things at play. We would only be able to, if we were to go full Cocoa Crunch, we could make 5 units or 5 boxes of Cocoa Crunch. But then we'd have like 50 grams of wheat left over. So is it worth maybe making 4 boxes of Cocoa Crunch and then 2 boxes of Bran Fan, because then we can maybe maximize it that way. So this is sort of how I'm thinking, because I'm like, it takes 10 to make, there's only 50 things of sugar and it's 10 to make cocoa. So you can make 5 units of cocoa, but then you'd be left out, you have like 50, you'd have 50 units of wheat left over. So, but the good news for us is that all of this is taken care of when we start to plot it. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to take this idea and we're going to do this. So pay attention. We're going to change this into this situation here. What I've got here is I've got those 4 equations that we just came up with. So 20b plus, and that's a bit unfortunate. Let me just fix this slightly. Oh, actually, I'm not going to fix it because it's too late. We're going to change this to 20b plus 10c. We're going to change this to 2010. So I'm just replacing these with what we actually, the variables that we decided on. Bad news though is that I've lost my working out from my previous slide, so I can't go back. But it doesn't matter, these are the same things. So plotting this here, and we're going to actually, one more thing is I'm just going to turn this into B, not BF, and C, not C. So there we go. Now, you might actually ask the question, this is actually would be a very good question to ask at this point, is like, oh, do I need to, does it matter which one's Y and which one's X? And the answer is no, it doesn't matter which one's Y and which one's X, but you've got to make sure that you choose one to be Y and one to be X. And so the next 2 things we're going to do is we're going to try and graph these 4 constraints. We're going to try and graph the wheat, the sugar, and the minerals. And then we're going to use that to find the corner points of the feasible region. So just like how we did in that last question, we need to find that. So all 3 of these are relationship constraints. So that means that all 3 of these we're going to find. These are easy to find because we can just go like this. So the first one, for wheat, we're going to say 20b plus 10c equals 100. Then what we're going to say is we're going to let b equal 0, which is going to give you 20, that's going to mean that you've got 10c equals 100, which means c equals 10. And then what we'll do is we'll plot let c equals 0, so that's going to give you 20b equals 100, so b equals 5. And so that means, and then what we'll do is we'll say we're going to check 0, 0. And if we check 0, 0 here, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to give us 0 is 0 plus 0 less than or equal to 100. The answer is it is. So therefore, we're going to get a line that goes through. We're going to get a line that goes through which points? through 10 and 5. So 10 and 5. I'm going to draw this line. Wham! Look how straight I drew that line, guys. I'm just amazing, aren't I? And so that's going to be, that line is 20b plus 10c is less than or equal to 100. And also that means, by the way, that we're going to ignore this region here. Let's cross it out. Perfect. Now, this next one, whoa. This next one we're going to do is sugar. Sugar is the same formula. I'm going to go through this one super quickly, okay? Because it's the same thing. It's the same for minerals. So we're going to do this together. You guys can follow along with me if you want, but I'm going to do this very, very quickly. So that means that I'm going to have a line that goes through 2 points. It's going to go through C equals 5, which is here, and B equals 10, which is going to be here, which means you're going to have this line looking like that. Cool. And I know that 0, 0 is in the region here, so that means that I'm going to cross out everything else. So that means all I need to do is cross out this section here. And I'm going to jot down this. So that was super quick. If you didn't really pay attention to everything I just did then, that's okay. I'm going to write down the formula over here. 5b plus 10c is less than or equal to 50. One more line, which is going to be this minerals one, which is going to be essentially going to be 3b plus 3c must be less than or equal to 8. It must be equal to 18. B equals 0. Let b equals 0. This can give you 3c equals 18, which is going to be c equals 6. And of course, because it's the same formula, let c equals 0. That's going to make b equals 6 because it's the same thing. So that, and if we check 0, 0, that's going to give you 0 plus 0. Is that less than 6? You bet your bottom dollar it is. So that's going to give you this line. That's going to look like we're going to have a point here at 3. No, sorry, point here at 6. And another point over here at 6. It's going to give you this line that looks like that. Again, another super straight line. 3b plus 3c must be less than 3b plus 3c is less than or equal to 18. Perfect. Which means we need to cross off a new part of the region, which is going to be this part here. Now, so that means our feasible region is here. Okay, so that was a lot of hard work, but we're still not done yet. We need to find the corner points. So we can see in this feasible region, if I now get a different color, let's go with green, that we've got a lot of corners. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners. We've got to label all of them. Luckily for us, 2 of them are easily labeled already. One of them is, 3 of them actually, So we've got 0, 5, we've got 5, 0, and we've got 0, 0. Let's talk about 0, 5 for a second. That would mean that you are making 5 boxes of Cocoa Crunch. And you can do that because you've got 50 grams of sugar. So you can go 5 times 5, 5 times 10 makes 50. You can also make 5 boxes of bran fan because you've got 100 grams of wheat. 5 times 20 is 100. But you can't do 10 things of bran fan. That wouldn't work. So these other two intersections are going to be a little bit more challenging to work out. And to do that, I'm going to need some more space. So I'm going to get rid of this section here where it says wheat and this section here where it says sugar. If you haven't copied them down yet, you have got like, let me know, but I need some more space. So sorry, they have to go. Normally in the big wide world, I would have just moved on to a different whiteboard, but yeah. Are we okay? Are you guys okay with me getting rid of the wheat, the sugar calculations? Okay, I'm going to assume that you are because I'm going to get rid of them. So we need to find these two intersections, and that means we're going to do that with two. We're going to do that with two. We're going to find the intersections. And again, I always, as I've said this already, I find this interesting that this is a small part of this question, yet the previous topic, like, oh, sorry, previously in this year, this was like the big end of linear of algebra, was being able to do these problems. But we now need to be able to do them like that. So we need to find the intersection between the purple and the red line. The purple and the red line happens to be this line and this line here. So we need to find the intersection. So what we would have is we have, oh crap, this is going to be annoying as hell. Okay, here we go. 5b plus 10c. 5b plus 10c is equal to 50. And then we've also got, oh, this is going to be so annoying. Why did I make this question so hard for? I hate myself. 3b plus 3c is equal to 18. Now you can see why. They just don't add nicely. We could rearrange this. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's turn this into b plus c is equal to 6. I can do that. I can divide everything by 3. Oh, okay, this is not going to be as hard as I thought it was going to be. I was like getting ready for like this is going to be terrible. So that means b equals 18 minus c. And I can substitute that into that previous one. So that means that I have now that means that I have now 5 times 18 minus c plus 10c equals 50. 5 times 18 is some number. Wait a second. That should be a 6. I was looking at that. I was like, how the heck did that? Yeah, sorry. 5 times 6 should be 30 minus, I need a calculator to do 5 times 6. 30 minus 5c plus 10c equals 50. 30 equals 30 plus 10c equals 50. 10c equals 50. C equals 5. 20. 20. 20. C equals 2. Because 30, yeah, because you need to subtract 30 from both sides. Sorry about the mistake there, guys. I technically made 2 mistakes, but we got there in the end. And if C equals 2, then that means B must equal B equals 6 minus C, so therefore B equals 4. So that means this point here in this graph, which I'm going to do in green, is 2, 4. That's where the purple and the red lines meet. Is it 2, 4? No, 4, 2. No, 2, 4. Because wait. What have I done? I made a mistake. What happened to the 5C? What did happen to the 5C? You're very, very right. Yeah. Why? Oh, here I am being all smart. I made a mistake. You can see the mistake here, right? This is the part, where the teacher's like, look, here is the mistake. 10C minus 5C, that should be 5C. Notice how I completely ignored that and just wrote 10C. This happens, and this is one of the reasons why I tell students to put their working out down so that I can see, you guys can see where you make mistakes. You can double check. There are a lot of students that don't write their working down. I could pick on some students in particular that don't do working out in their tests, but I won't do that because I'm trying not to shame students as much as I would like to. But yeah, you need to make sure that you show your working out. So here is my mistake. So let's fix that mistake. And we're going to fix that mistake. I'm going to rub out everything beneath it. Normally what I would suggest to you guys is not to do this, but because I would suggest just cross it out and move somewhere else. I have to because I just don't have the space. So that would mean that 30 is going to be plus 5C equals 50. 5C equals 20. C equals 4. And because B equals 6 take away C, B equals 2, which means that this point here is 2, 4. And that's just one of the corner points. We're going to do one more corner point. This is why I was like dreading this question, because I know this question's a big question. We've spent 35 minutes on this question alone. But I'm trying to show you guys all of the steps from start to end on how you could do one of these giant questions. So for the other one, let's hope the other one is a little bit easier. We need to find this corner point, which is between the green and the orange. So the green and the orange corner point. Now the green and the orange, purple and the orange. The purple and the orange is going to be, in this case, we've got, for orange, we've got 20B plus 10C equals 100. And for the purple, we've got 3B plus 3C equals 18. We're going to do the same trick. B plus C equals 6. B equals 6 minus C. And we're going to substitute this into 1. So what's that going to look like? That's going to look like this. I'm going to see if I can do this time without making, what happened there? What happened there? We're going to see if we can do this time, ladies and gents, without making a massive mistake. But keep your eyes peeled, because I may make a mistake, and then you can be like, sir, you stuffed up when you said you wouldn't. So instead of B, I'm going to write 20 times 6 minus C plus 10C equals 100. Now 20 times 6 is going to be 120 minus 20C plus 10C equals 100. Okay. So now that's going to give us 120 plus minus 10C equals 100. Removing 120 from both sides gives you negative 10C equals negative 20. So C equals 2. So what I did with each of these things is I would subtract 120 from both sides. And then here I divided both sides by negative 10. Gives me C equals 2, which means that if C equals 2, then B must equal 4 because of this question formula here. That means that this point here is 4, 2. And now I've gotten all of the corner points. Good. I know it's exciting. Corner points are like intense. Can you believe it? We did so well. Yeah, you better wag your tail. Okay, so B equals 4. Now, have I got any questions on this? I know that I stuffed this up a couple of times, but we got there in the end, thanks to some help from Cindy, who pointed out that I made a massive mistake. But yeah, it's always, and like, the other reason that you could say that I knew that I made a mistake is because I was trying to think if this is where I was like, wait, I made a mistake. Because I was like, if B was 4, then I'm like, why is this not fitting on my graph? This doesn't work on my graph. Like, I can't put this on my graph. And so that's why it was like, I can sort of see the answer already. Without even knowing it, I know the answer is about 2, 4. So I know the answer is about here. So, are there any questions before I jump to the next slide? And yes, before you guys go, you know, surely we're done. No, we're not. We've got like 1 major step left, 2 major steps left, and then we're finished. Okay, I'm going to keep going. If I've lost people, I apologize. But the next step here is that once you've got your corner points, the next step is to then say, right, okay, so hold on, we're gonna have to make some quick on the fly changes. Yeah, so give me a second. How was your weekend, guys? Anyone getting up to anything exciting? I mean, unlikely, we've all been in lockdown, but you know, maybe one of you guys did. I pulled down a chicken coop. We have a chicken coop in our backyard. And I was like, I'm going to pull this down. And I did. And it was very, very difficult. I'm not against chickens. I would like to get chickens in the future, but not right now. I just don't have time and the patience to have chickens at the moment. And we wanted a better coop because the chicken coop was like falling apart. Yeah, so that was what I did in the weekend. It's super exciting. Okay, and we're back. By the way, if you want to leave like a comment about what you did on the weekend in the chat privately, you can do that too. Oh my God, what the heck is V? The heck is V? Man, you think that you've got these slides perfect, and you've worked for hours on getting them, and then you just make mistakes. Here we go. So we've got the, you can see that my graph is now no longer got everything, but it doesn't matter. We already know that the feasible region is at the bottom. and we know that we have 4 corner points. 0, 0. We've got 0, 5. We've got, now we know that this is 2, 4 and 4, 2. And also 5, 0. So the question then becomes, well, which of these points is going to work? Which of these points is going to give us the maximum amount of profit? And the only way to check, and because each of these points is included, because each of these lines is solid, we need to check all of them. So that means we need to put these all into the objective function. So the objective functions here, and by the way, these are constructed in such a way that we've got BC, sorry. Brand is on the left and called is here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run each of these through our objective function to calculate the amount of profits. So our amount of profits for the first one is going to be 3.5 times 0 plus 4.2 times 0. And that's going to give us a profit of 0, which makes sense, right? If we don't turn the machines on at all, then we're not going to make any boxes. We're not going to get anything. Is this still a valid way? Yes, we can still like it will make all these constraints work is by doing 0, 0. What if I make 5 boxes of Cocoa Crunch? Well, that means I'm going to have P equals 3.5 times 0 plus 4.2 times 5. That means if I make 5 boxes of Cocoa Crunch, then I'm going to have $21 profit. And that's because 4.2 times 5 is 21. And that means, and the advantage of that is that, great, cool, I have 21 boxes, but what the disadvantage is that I have 50 grams of wasted wheat, which is annoying because I could have used that 50 grams to make something else. So what if instead I made, I took away some of my Cocoa Crunch. I took away 1 box of the Cocoa Crunch and used that to make 2 boxes of bran fan, to use up some of that spare wheat. What's that going to make us? P equals 3.5 times 2 plus 4.2 times 4. Now, before you guys think that I'm some kind of genius, I'm literally going to shove this straight into my calculator. I'm not trying to show off here and calculate this all in my head. I get $23.80. So by sacrificing one of my boxes of Cocoa Crunch to get some more boxes of bran fan, I actually get a bigger profit. What if instead I went, I'm going to do this in a bit of a weird way. What if I went full bran fan? What if instead I went, all right, let's go full bran fan. We're going to use up all the wheat for the bran fan, and we're going to have some leftover sugar because we're not going to need all of it. So 4.2 times 0. If I went full bran fan, then I would walk away with $17.50. And then what if I, instead of going full bran fan, I thought, well, actually, let's sacrifice one of the boxes of bran fan to make some sugar so that I can get ourselves some more Cocoa Crunch. So $3.50 times 4 plus $4.20 times 1 times 2. So 3.5, and I'm literally putting this straight into the calculator, plus 4.2 times 2. Oh, come on, what happened? 3.5 times 4 plus 4.2 times 2 gives you $22.40. So the greatest profit that I can get is by, so to maximize profit, you should make two boxes of Bran Fam and 4 boxes of Cocoa Crunch, and that will give you a profit of $23.80, which is the highest profit here. I'm going to now pause the timer, which tells us that this took us 47 minutes and 26 seconds to complete this. Now, saying that though, I spent a lot of time explaining how I was doing these questions and stuff like that, fixing up some slideshows, getting some input from you guys. But my point is that these questions do take a long time. That's why I haven't actually set that many questions from, there aren't that many questions set for 12H and 12I. There's probably about, I think for 12I, there's only 3 questions. So, but these are the full steps that we need to go through. Now, before I move, I've got one last slide that I need to show you guys before I let you guys go. What time have I got at the moment? It is 12:32. So I've got to be quick here. Guys, have I got any questions on this before I get rid of this slide? Let me check the chat. Any questions in the chat? Any queries? So you'll see, you will have seen at the bottom here, I had in red, and this is the last little thing I want to show you guys, is I had, some suggestions here. So step 6 was substitute all the corner points of the objective function, and step 7 was answer the question, which was what we did at the very, very end. And these steps have been what we've been doing the whole time. For the very last thing I'm going to get you guys to do before the lesson ends is this. What I thought would be good is, what if I collected all of these steps? What were all of the things that we did? So all of the things that we did was essentially these steps here. And what I'd like you to do as a very last thing, and once you finish this, you can log off, is I thought as the last thing I wanted you to do was to copy down these 7 steps. Realistically, it should, step 4 should be one extra little thing, which I might change really, really, really quickly. Which is good. And I'm going to change this to and feasible region. And that's perfect. And then that's it. So what I'd like you to do at the very end is copy this down. We're going to spend pretty much all of Wednesday's class, given I spent all of today's class explaining this question, review all of Wednesday's class to work on 12H and 12I. Once you've got this copied down, you guys can leave the class and go grab yourself some lunch. And I will see you on Wednesday.